Web2.0 technology into school law courses in particular. My name is Justin Bathen, and I'm with the University of Kentucky, and I hope you enjoyed your stay here in the Commonwealth, and good luck as you guys have safe flights home. I want to talk about 3 changes, 2 concerns, and at the end I have 1 pleading. First, the changes. This is change number 1. I want to talk about technology. Actually, I want to talk about technology change. And actually, I want to talk about rapid technology change. This is a list of inventions in the 20th century. I'll go through a few. In 1901, we had the first radio transmission across the Atlantic. In 1903, we flew the first airplane. In 1908, we had the Model T. In 1910, we had motion pictures. In 1927, we did television. In 1932, we did photography. In 1937, we had photocopies. In 1941, we had software-controlled computers. In 1945, we did the atomic bomb. In 1955, we invented fiber optics. In 1958, we invented lasers. In 1959, very productive time here, we did the microchip. In 1967, we did calculators. In 1968, we did RAM. In 1972, we did word processing. In 1978, we did spreadsheets. In 1979, we did cell phones. In 1981, we came up with personal computers. And in 1990, we created a thing called the World Wide Web. And this is important. The pace of change is important. This is an exponential curve. You all remember this from like high school, right? Okay, good. Exponential curves on logarithmic graphs are straight lines. So you may or may not have heard of this thing called Moore's Law. Moore's Law says that the computing capacity of a basic chip is doubling every 2 years. And so you can see this is a logarithmic graph, and so this is an exponential curve. You can see the y-axis is exponential. And you can remember 286, 386, then we did Pentiums, Pentium 1, 2, 3, 4. We thought we were doing something with Pentium 4. We thought we may have hit a limit, but we didn't. Then we came up with core processors, and now we have quad-core processors, and on we go. So the pace of change is exponential. Actually, technology is exponential. This is a law you've probably not heard of. This is a law called Kurzweil's law. And this law actually says this. An analysis of the history of technology shows that technological change is exponential, contrary to the common sense intuitive linear view. So we won't experience 100 years of progress in the 21st century. It will be more like 20,000 years of progress at today's rate. That's the end of point 1. Point number 2. Information. I want to talk about information, and actually I want to talk about information revolutions. We've had a few of them in human history, and we're in one now. But before we get there, we need to talk about an awesome technology that we have been exploiting for a long time. And that technology is paper. Paper is actually an incredibly useful tool, and to understand that tool, we need to look back in history a bit to paper that looked like that. And before we had paper that looked like that, we had paper that looked like this. This is the skin of a goat. And before we had that kind of paper, we had this kind of writing, okay? But this kind of writing in and of itself was revolutionary, all right? What happened was information was preserved over time. That is a revolutionary concept. But the technology behind that preservation was, of course, very limited. We were highly limited in mobility, as in the only way to re-access that information was to re-enter the cave. And we know caves, right? They're usually dark. So this was not the most useful technology. So we improved on it by going to a technology that was like this, we call parchment. This was mobile. We could write information on this kind of technology and move that information from place to place. And that was an incredibly useful technological innovation. But of course, this was an incredibly expensive kind of technology. You had to actually kill something in order to generate the usable tools. But nevertheless, it was revolutionary because we could move technology, and we can move information. The Egyptians improved on that. They actually brought the production costs down substantially. They found some weeds growing out there in the Nile River Delta and put those weeds together and could start writing on that. And when you do that, you can produce a lot more information. The actual physical space that information can be contained on grows exponentially. And so that was also revolutionary. One more revolution, this is a printing press. The printing press, it's important to understand, did not really change the fundamental technology. What it changed was the production capacity. It changed how paper was produced in copies. And so it was actually quite useful because we could now move information to many, many people. So that in and of itself was a revolution. That revolution was the revolution we're coming out of right now. We built incredible monuments to this information technology. This is the Library of Congress in DC, one of the world's foremost libraries. But that technology still has limitations. The Library of Congress is in a physical space. The books occupy physical space, and those books, in order to access that information, must be physically moved from place to place. Nevertheless, an important thing to understand as we come out of that era and move into a new era, where we lose some of those physical space constraints, and because we're losing those physical space constraints, we are now in another information revolution in human history. You've heard of the word information revolution, but I want you to grasp the fundamental nature of what has changed. We took the Library of Congress and we put it right now all around all of your heads. There is like 7 or 8 wireless networks in this room, and so all that information now can be accessed anywhere because we have detached information from a physical object. And we did that by using these ones and zeros in binary code and shipping them around fiber optic cables all over the world. That in and of itself was a revolution, and this is not a small revolution. We are at the beginning of it, but it is already fundamentally re-altering how we exist. There are 70 exabytes of information being produced, and that's going to be produced this year. That's 70 billion gigabytes, to try and put it in some kind of context. But to help you understand it more, 70 exabytes is more than the Library of Congress holds. Actually, it's a lot more. It's more 518,000 times the Library of Congress is going to be produced this year. 0.01% of that information is going to be rewritten on paper. This is a fundamental kind of change. Into point number 2. Point number 3, Web 2.0. The web around 1995 was really, really boring. Mostly it was just scientists talking to other scientists, and that actually was not all that interesting. What we needed was a lot of people, and actually we needed a certain kind of people. We needed those people to be ordinary. And so the ordinary people around 2001 decided to show up. And they decided they wanted stuff. They wanted video, and they wanted pictures, and they wanted maps, and they wanted encyclopedias. They actually wanted to buy stuff and sell stuff and share stuff and actually fall in love. And they wanted to do that all locally. So you see, the web became ordinary. And when things are ordinary, they are useful, and when they are useful, they are indispensable. That's the end of point number 3. Now I want to talk about a couple of concerns that I have. First concern. They wanted all of those things, and now they want learning. As in, they want learning now. Everything is on the web. This is the line of thought. Everything is on the web. The web is useful for everything. Everything should include learning. Schooling, of course, does not always necessarily equal learning, and learning does not necessarily always equal schooling. And that's actually good, because a whole lot of learning is already happening on the web. Much of 80% or more of my learning is from the web. Of course, schooling and the web have not really meshed very well yet. What do we know mostly for schooling's response to the web? They block it. So most of the world's new information is digital, so schooling necessarily becomes more detached from learning. That's the end of concern number 1. Concern number 2. Innovation is dependent on leaders. Hierarchical structures are equal to bad networks. Most school structures look something like this. This network becomes incredibly dependent on this individual who connects all the other pieces of that network. And they exercise a lot of control because they sit at that place in the network. They can control the budget, the personnel, the assignments, the facilities, the time, the discipline, the curriculum, the evaluations, and actually policy. And what that all adds up to is that they can control information. And this is a great slide from a friend of mine. The people in charge of leading school organizations into the 21st century often are the least knowledgeable about it. That's the end of point number 2. So this is my pleading to you. Do something about this, please. Particularly, I think it would be useful if we please integrated the web technology into your school law courses and other teaching. I know all of you in this room may not be school law instructors, but those of you that are not, you still conduct some teaching, even if you're the district's general counsel or general counsel of state board. You do a lot of teaching, and so I'm pleading with you to start integrating that technology. The logical question is why? So I have 3 reasons. Number 1, you are a leader. And you are not just a leader, you are a leader of leaders. We have an interesting hierarchical structure that exists in American education where we have tens of millions of students at the bottom, millions of teachers teaching those students, hundreds of thousands of administrators teaching the teachers, hundreds of school law instructors across the country teaching the school administrators, and you are sitting at the top of that pyramid. Whether or not you are in a university, if you're in the general counsel's office, you are still at the upper echelon of American education. And we need leaders because change will flow down. Change does flow down. This is not the first time we've adapted to massive information change. That's the end of reason number 1. Reason number 2 is your job requires it. For those of you that are faculty, this is the total online enrollment in post-secondary institutions. This data is old, but it's what I could get this morning. But in the far right-hand bottom corner, 20% of courses are wholly online in post-secondary instruction now. And that's 2006. I'm sure we're well over 25, probably 30% or more. So you do not have the luxury of ignoring these changes. You will have to learn with your students, but that's important because you should use the tools that students naturally use anyway. And students don't naturally use that tool. Instead, students use tools like these, YouTube and wikis and podcasts and blogging. And actually, Julie, if you will pass around the papers inside of there, I have an example of an assignment that I give to my classes that involve those 4 particular technologies, developed it at Indiana University with our presider here today, Janet, too. Of course, that's not all the students are using, and this is only one example. There are a wealth of potential tools that you could use in your teaching, all of which work very well, but all of which are not being used very heavily right now. And finally, my 3rd reason is that law is change. More importantly, law understands change. Most people, I think, have the conception that law is inherently conservative. We try to protect the organization. That actually is sort of a misconception because law is inherently revolutionary. Boundaries were not the boundaries until the law put them there. And of course, boundaries move all of the time, and we move with those boundaries. We change, and that is good because I need you to lead it. We can do this. In fact, we are doing it. This is a list of topics that were presented in this program at ELA. Our membership is already changing. We are just not using that change in our teaching. That's my last reason. And I want to finally say that there is help out there. I am the Associate Director of the Center for the Advanced Study of Technology Leadership in Education, and it's our job. What we do is to put resources out there for leaders in order to make this migration. More specifically to education law, this is the Ed Jurist. This is a blog. I've been blogging for 6 years or so, and some of you visit regularly. Thank you for that. But what I do there is I just put out some of the latest information, the latest tools, and it's a great place to go to begin to integrate some more tools into your teaching. And finally, thousands of people are willing to help you for free. This is, some of you can recognize this is a Twitter compilation of Twitter followers. I'm on Twitter, as are some of my colleagues. Even here at ELA, there were back channels happening on Twitter during this conference. You probably didn't know about them. But you will soon, because you can't ignore them forever. And nor is ELA. ELA has asked me to help ELA change, to adapt to this, this time. And so these people are willing to help you build your own personal learning network in this new information age. The last point I want to make is from John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And that's it. Thank you.